Welcome, friends. James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com, 13th of December 2016, and I've been putting off making this video until such time as the 24/7 news cycle slows down enough for us to get some breathing room about the crazy events that are taking place right now, but I now realize that there will be no such opportunity for reflection on these events because we have entered one of those vortices of history where things get progressively crazier by the day so that you can barely keep up with the latest craziness. And as you may or may not have noticed in the past few weeks, both the European Parliament and the US House have both passed bills targeting Russian propaganda websites. In the EU's case, because those websites challenge the democratic values that we all know the EU bureaucracy holds so dear, right? All right, well, that seems reasonable. So what are these Russian propaganda websites and how do I identify them? Well, luckily enough, just in the last month, there's been a new website popped up by shady anonymous sources to tell us exactly what is a propaganda website and what is not. Your friendly neighborhood propaganda identification service. And who are these evil stooges in the employ of the Kremlin, although there is zero evidence given for any of that. Oh, of course, it's people like me. So there you go. I'm suddenly learning I'm a Putin puppet. As is pretty much everyone at the Atlantic Council getting in on the game with their Kremlin's Trojan Horses document, a pretty remarkable document painting literally every European politician who is not straight down the center line of neoliberal, neoconservative consensus, quote-unquote, reality as being a literal Putin puppet. Not just the fringe candidates that you could imagine them painting with such language, the far left and far right that we're always hearing so much about, but also former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder and others are named in this document as Putin puppets. It's absolutely crazy what's going on right now, and of course that has culminated in the ultimate craziness. The secret CIA assessment saying Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House, which I'm sure you've all seen by now. But if you do go back to this original report, this Washington Post report from which this is all sourcing, you will note that it is all sourced from not only anonymous officials, but anonymous officials who were briefed on a briefing that was made to U.S. senators. So follow that line of logic and see how close to anything even resembling evidence this report actually is. But evidence, schmevidence. In fact, if you ask for evidence, you are probably carrying water for the Kremlin, which is exactly the charge that a sitting U.S. congressman just made against this man, Tucker Carlson, for having the audacity to ask if there is any evidence for this assertion that Russia is behind the hacking of the elections. I would actually be happy if someone would just show that these elections, in whatever sense you want to say, whether the DNC or Podesta or the elections themselves were hacked, rather than having this information leaked. But at any rate, apparently asking for evidence that Russia was behind it is the equivalent of being a Putin propagandist. This has led to the next remarkable step, with Clinton allies looking to leverage the Electoral College, which, to translate into English, means that they are going to try to get information disclosed to the Electoral College so that the electors will have that CIA-supplied evidence-free information in their back pockets when they go to cast their votes for the next president of the United States, because, yes, of course, the actual vote has not taken place yet, no matter what you actually thought you were trying to vote for. So we have a situation where literally the Clinton camp is willing to take this to the point of U.S. civil war to try to get Clinton in the White House by hook or by crook. Now, couple all of this Russia hysteria with the other meme that, of course, is making the rounds right now, fake news, which if you haven't heard, well, here's the summary from Brian Williams.
And lately, there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news. Our own
That's right. That's Brian Williams bringing you the hard truth about fake news. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. But if you haven't been following this, it turns out fake news is not just in the United States. It's not just to help Russia, but it's often tied to that. In fact, it's even in places like Italy, where, of course, we recently saw Renzi having to step down after losing the referendum on the constitutional reforms. And as it turns out, his main opposition, this Beppe Grillo and the Five Star Movement, well, Italy's most popular political party is leading Europe in fake news and Kremlin propaganda. There it is, fake news and Kremlin propaganda, all together in one headline from those trustworthy sources at BuzzFeed News. So, I think we know where this is trending, and in case you need it spelled out for you, here is the soon-to-be-anointed queen herself.
It's now clear that so-called fake news can have real-world consequences. This isn't about politics or partisanship. Lives are at risk. Lives of ordinary people just trying to go about their days, to do their jobs, contribute to their communities.
Well, that sounds like a pretty harsh and pretty terrible thing that's going on. What's the government going to do about it?
It's a danger that must be addressed, and addressed quickly.
Indeed. And, well, any guesses on how the U.S. government, the federal government, would think to address such a problem as that? Well, as a hint, it might involve the repealing of the First Amendment or modification as is necessary to create the space to clamp down on anything outside of the mainstream consensus view of reality. Now, this should be worrying not only to people who are in the audience of something like the Corbett Report, but really and truly to everyone. Because once the government starts getting in and regulating what is true news and what is fake news, and how do we regulate those sites, or how do we clamp down, how do we censor people, how do we basically become the adults who can think for the population? Because we can't trust people to think for themselves. We must do it. Once you give that power to government, even if you are on the side of the person who is making that argument, again, 4 years or 8 years or 12 years from now, when someone you hate, detest from the bottom of the pit of your stomach has that kind of power, is that really what you want? Do you really, if you hate Trump enough that you want Clinton to overtake and win this through the Electoral College, what if there's a Trump 2 or Trump Jr. or some Trump-like person in 4 years that takes that power away from Hillary? I bet you suddenly it'll become a bad idea, huh? This is the really remarkable spot that we are at right now, and there's a lot to say about this, and obviously this is a topic I'll be going over in quite a bit more detail in the days, weeks, and months to come, but I just want to point your attention to what I think is a really quite interesting article about this phenomenon of this fake news and Russian propaganda and the government trying to control what us mere proles can or cannot read. This is called Manufacturing Normality. It's by C.J. Hopkins over at Counterpunch. And in this, he says that political distinctions like left and right are disappearing and are being replaced by imponderable distinctions like normal and abnormal, true and false, and real and fake. Such distinctions do not lend themselves to argument. They are preferred to us as axiomatic truths, empirical facts which no normal person would ever dream of contradicting. In place of competing political philosophies, the neoliberal/neoconservative intelligentsia is substituting a simpler choice: normality or abnormality. The nature of the abnormality varies according to what is being stigmatized. Today it's Corbyn the anti-Semite. Tomorrow it's Sanders the racist crackpot, or Trump the Manchurian candidate, or whatever. That the smears themselves are indiscriminate, and in many instances totally ridiculous, belies the effectiveness of the broader strategy, which is simply to abnormalize the target and whatever he or she represents. It makes no difference whether one is smeared as a racist, as Sanders was during the primaries, or as an anti-Semite, as Corbyn has been, or as fascist, as Trump has relentlessly been, or peddlers of Russian propaganda, as Truth Out, Counterpunch, Naked Capitalism, and the Corbett Report, and a number of other publications have been. The message is, they are somehow not normal. Why is this different from the shameless smear jobs the press has been doing on people since the invention of the press and shameless smear jobs? Well, hold on, because I'm about to tell you. Mostly it has to do with words, especially binary oppositions like real and fake and normal and abnormal, which are, of course, essentially meaningless, their value being purely tactical, which is to say they denote nothing. They are weapons deployed by a dominant group to enforce conformity to its consensus reality. This is how they're being used at the moment. All right, I'm going to let you guys read through this whole article. It really is worth reading, but I think there's an exceptionally important point about that's being made here, and this is coming from the left side of the spectrum and the right side of the spectrum and people who don't consider themselves on the spectrum equally, because everyone understands that this is not going in a good direction. When we start creating these categories of real and fake news, these pat categories that are left, of course, undefined so that we can slot in whatever websites we don't like, then we really are detaching ourselves from anything approaching a genuine political or ideological conversation. And that is really, really dangerous, because as I think we can all see, this is how free speech will be eroded and eroded and eroded until you will not be hearing my voice anymore, because some government bureaucracy or entity or someone in Silicon Valley or some other person with some leverage over this situation will tell you that you are not allowed to go to sites like the Corbett Report. This is not a game. This is not a joke. We are living in insane times. So, as always, and as has been the founding ethos of this website since the beginning, it is to arm yourself with the knowledge of your enemy and what your enemies are doing and what we can do to counteract this agenda. I'm interested to hear from the Corbett Report community about this, so please do log in and leave your comments in the comments section for this video at corbettreport.com. And we're going to be returning to this topic again and again in the future, I can imagine, so we'll leave it there for today. Once again, the links will be in the show notes for this video at corbettreport.com. This is James Corbett, signing off for now.